If you're like me and a lot of other freelance writers, you've gone through the feast and famine cycle. So it can be really tough and you're working really hard and you're like, yes, I'm making all this money. And then, like, a few months down the road, you're like, oh no, I finished all my deadlines and all my clients are done with their work. So what do I do now? It can be really, really frustrating and really hard to break that cycle. You get sucked into all this work and you're trying to deliver for your clients and make sure that everything is done right and that you're paying attention and um, that you're delivering quality work. But man, when you hit that famine cycle, it feels really, really rough. So we're going to go over a little bit of how to kind of eliminate that as a freelance writer, how to kind of move beyond that and make sure that you have work coming in, that your pipeline is filled, that you are able to continue as a freelance writer without having to quit or get a part-time job or worry about money all the time. And some of us, like, I still worry about money. So even during even during the famine, or I mean, even during the feast parts of the cycle, sometimes I worry about money. It's just like it's something that I work through. But this will kind of alleviate that a bit. It'll kind of make you feel like you can take a deep breath. So what we're going to go over is how to eliminate the feast and famine cycle. So number one, we're going to talk about marketing. So one of the things that I find a lot of freelance writers do, and one of the things that I used to do, was that I wouldn't do enough marketing. I would end up in this horrible hole, basically, where I would have a bunch of work, I would do a bunch of work, I would be stressed out meeting my deadlines and trying to get everything done, and then boom, it was just like a ghost town. There's nothing there. I didn't have anything to work on, and I was like, well, I guess it's time to start marketing. No. We need to be always marketing to make sure that our pipeline is continually filled. So that means that we are, even if you're really busy, that means sending, one LOI a week. That means sending maybe 5, but it means that you're consistently marketing all the time. And then, eventually what happens is you'll end up getting a bunch of work, or you'll get referrals, you'll get inbound leads, and it won't be as difficult to manage all that marketing because you won't have to do it as often because you have more work coming in. But when you're first kind of starting out and you're getting through the first few years of freelance writing, marketing is really important. So the way that I do it is I end up collecting a list. I have a Google spreadsheet of all these companies to reach out to, and I collect them over time. I collect them from Crunchbase, I collect them from press releases, I collect them from LinkedIn. I find companies that make that kind of butter zone, that at least 5 to 50 million in revenue. Right now, I've been kind of shooting for companies that have at least 25 to 50, probably like closer to 50, just because I kind of want to ramp up my business a little bit. And also I want to work on more complex projects. So I'm kind of going that way. But that kind of, I look through different niche lists. That revenue kind of informs who I pick off of those lists. So that means that I'm looking at travel startups or prop tech startups to watch, or I'm looking at top 100 lists, or I'm looking at niche publications about who's getting funding or who's making money, or I look at, TechCrunch or Crunchbase, or like the angel lists, or LinkedIn, or Fortune 500, or, the Inc. 5000. I look at all these different lists to make my own. And I find that if you have that list, you have that spreadsheet to go off of, it's a lot easier to do your marketing. Because you're like, oh, I need to do my marketing today. Oh, I'll just pick this one company off here, find them on LinkedIn, send them an email, poof, and then I'm done. So I find that if you have the list, that makes it a lot easier to consistently do your marketing, which means your pipeline is filled, which means you don't have as many or any famine in your business. So always be crafting that list. Always be on the lookout for up and coming companies or places getting funding or different types of places that, are in your niche that you could reach out to, add them to a list and keep going from there. If you're really starting out, if you're a baby freelancer and this is kind of your first kind of foray, make that list huge. Like mine, I usually tap at 50 and then I kind of send a bunch out. But if you're just starting out, you need to be sending a lot of marketing. So like make a list of 100 and then do that, and then make another list of 100 and do that. But the key here is that we are always marketing, even if it's one LOI. Like, I don't think anybody can convince me they don't have time to send one LOI, especially if you have templates and if you have a way to kind of shorten the process, which is that you already have a list and you have a quick template to send out that's basically like, hey, do you need help? I do these things. I'm in this niche. Here's my past clients. Love to chat with you. Bye. If you're looking for templates, I have them below if you're willing to check them out. Those I've developed over years, and lots of freelance writers have bought them and used them, and found them super helpful to make sure that their freelance writing business is, chugging along. And it also has contracts and other stuff in there too. But the whole point here is that we have to keep up with our marketing. Even if you're super, super busy, you can send one LOI. Just send it as an email on LinkedIn, or, just send it by email, but you can do at least one. One of the things, I'll give you guys like an insider thing. So what I do now, a lot of the times, is because my business is a little bit different. I have more inbound leads. My workflow is typically, like, this year has been a wild ride for me. But typically what happens is I have a bunch of work and I do marketing kind of like quarterly now. So I end up doing a bunch of marketing kind of the first month of the quarter and then kind of leave it. And I might do a little bit throughout the quarter, but I usually do a chunk in the front and then kind of let it play out. That's just kind of like what I've kind of evolved in over time. I used to do it every week. I used to do it every day when I was looking for work. When you kind of get more under your belt, you still need to do that marketing because, that's kind of how you earn more and move up to more clients and kind of avoid that famine part of the cycle. But I think that consistent marketing, like, I've never really dropped it. I've never really, like, I might have not done it for a little while, but it's always something that kind of comes back, and I end up doing it to make sure I have work, and that I'm also moving up and working on more complex projects or working for clients who have a lot more in the pipeline. So that's number one. Number one is that you always have to be marketing. That's how you eliminate that feast and famine cycle. Number two, when you're eliminating the feast and famine cycle, is that you need to work on projects that have a longer timeline. You can't be working on 10,000 articles a month and then have nothing. That's what I used to do. I used to have a ton of articles, like publications or blog posts, and it used to be just like 1 month and then it would stop. And then I would have to send all these pitches and I'd have to do a ton of groundwork just to make sure I end up having work the next month. But you have to hop on the train of basically, like, you need longer projects. Well, how do you get those? I get asked that a lot. What you need to do is to ask the company when they first reach out, or when you get an answer from an LOI, you get on a call with them and you're talking about projects. You ask them, like, what else do you have in the pipeline? Like, it sounds like you need help with blog posts, but do you have anything else in the pipeline? You can also ask them, like, how do we build this relationship? I'm trying to move my business in a direction where, I'm trying to move my business in a direction where I'm developing relationships with people rather than just kind of a one and done. What are you doing? What do you think about building this relationship? What else do you have in your pipeline? Is there anything quarterly or in the rest of the year that you feel like you could need help with? These are questions you ask before you ever sign a contract, before you ever move ahead with them. You want to know where they're going, because a lot of times what happens with, this happened to me, it happens early in your career where you think like, oh my gosh, I just need the work. Yes, I'll do it. And then you're in this famine cycle where you've done a ton of work and that covers you for maybe a month or two, but you did the work 1 month and you have money for 2 months. And then the next month you just have no work and you kind of have to scramble again. So you got to ask them when you get on the call, like, what's going on? What are you guys thinking? And if it's like, oh, we're trying to do just like 4 blog posts, or, oh yeah, we just need this one case study and that's it. Like, you can take that work, but you have to know that that's not helping you build your business into something where if you talk to someone, they're like, yes, we have a content marketing strategy. We're thinking about rolling out this in quarter 1, this in quarter 2, this in quarter 3. And then that's how you have more long-term work. It's places where you already know that even if you do this one project, if everything goes right and you feel like you guys are a fit and they like your work, you can continue working together. They might hire you for other stuff. These are questions you got to ask. It helps you avoid that feast and famine cycle because you have a longer stretch of work. Instead of having to scramble all the time and trying to get more projects and, oh my gosh, I need more clients. Like, I need thousands of clients every year. You need fewer clients who have a longer stretch of work. And the only way you can find this out is to ask them when you get on a call with them. And I like doing calls. I used to hate it a lot. But I like calls now because I feel like that's the best way to feel somebody out. Are you a fit? Like, can you have a conversation with them on the phone, or is it really uncomfortable? Is it really stilted? Are they trying to be your boss? Um, there's a lot of things you can feel out on the phone. And if you ask them, like, what's in the pipeline, and they pause for a long time, and then they're like, oh, well, right now we're just doing this, or like they're not talking about their strategy. Like, even if, let's say, it doesn't work out, right? Let's say you're working for them, it doesn't work out, and you go your separate ways. At least that, if it didn't, if that didn't happen, you at least had the chance of more work. And that helps you eliminate the cycle. So we ask about that for upfront. We see where they're going. You can also check this out on their website. So their website will show, like, are they doing case studies? Are they doing blog posts? Are they doing white papers? Are they doing downloadables like ebooks or fact sheets or checklists or guides? Are they having thought leadership on LinkedIn? There's a lot of things that you can check out before you even get on the call of what they're doing. If it looks like their content is funneled into just a blog, then you either have to get a super long-term blog contract, which I try to make mine just 90 days to see if we're a fit and see if the blog content is working for them, or you end up basically doing a few blog posts and that's it. So make sure that when you are trying to get work, that you're asking questions up front, that you are getting these longer, complex projects. Like, you want to hear someone tell you about their content strategy. You want them to go through, like, here's how our marketing works. Here's the audience we're going for. They respond to ebooks and they respond to emails. We need a drip campaign and 3 ebooks. Like, you need to hear that they understand the content to create for their actual audience. When you start hearing that they have a plan, like, that's a good thing. That's all. Like, don't stress out that it's going to be too much work and you're going to get overwhelmed. Like, companies usually move a lot slower than we do, so they're going to roll it out slowly. So number 2 in what you're doing here to eliminate the feast and famine cycle is to get those longer, complex projects. Number 3 here, I'm going to try to make it like just part of the things because I'm like almost at halfway. So we're just going to go over part of it. I'll make a part 2 to this later. So number 3, when you're eliminating the feast and famine cycle, is your mindset. I found that this is really important when you're thinking about it. Like, a lot of writers get stuck in this point of like, oh, I have a lot of work, I'm fine. Their mindset is like, oh, I'm fine for now. Like, they don't think far enough out where they're like, how am I going to pay for kibbles in 6 months? They're just like, oh, right now I have a ton of work. I'm stressed out. My hair is falling out. And I haven't eaten in 3 days because I'm too busy with my deadlines. So when you think about your mindset in terms of this feast and famine cycle, it needs to be a long-term thing. You need to think like 3-6 months out. If you can look at your calendar and it's not filled up, or you're looking at it and you're like, okay, I've got a couple of things like on the pot to boil. Basically, like, I've got a couple of things in the pipeline. I don't really have a ton of signed contracts. And you look 6 months down the road and you're like scared you're going to run out of savings, or you're scared about your money, which I have been many times. I didn't realize the mindset piece, but you have to pay attention to that. You have to like get out of what you're doing right now and focus more on a long-term thing. You're like, okay, this is what I'm working on right now, but what am I going to work on in May? This is what I'm working on right now, but what is my Q4 going to look like? Sometimes I found that it helps people to break it out into quarters. So if they're like, hey, this year I want to make $82,000, break that out into quarters, and how close are you this quarter? So let's say your first quarter, I should have picked a different number. So let's say $80,000 because that's easier math for me. So let's say your first quarter, you're like, cool, I got $21,000. Cool. So your next quarter needs to be that other $20,000. Well, let's say you're in April, because we're still in Q1 right now. So let's say you're in April and you're like, oh crap, I've only booked $1,000 worth of work. Okay, cool. And let's say a couple weeks go by and you're like, cool, I booked $10,000 worth of work. You're halfway, but you still have no work planned for May and June. So let's say April is like, sweet, I got a 10K month or 11K month. This is going to be awesome. And then you're like, oh shit, I don't have anything to do for May and June. How am I going to get $20,000? That's where the marketing comes in. That's where we got to focus our mindset on like zooming out a little bit and looking further into the future. Like, what's going on with our business? Your mindset needs to be focused on not just being a writer, but being a business owner and forecasting where your business is headed and where you're going with your goals, and are you working for the clients that you want to. So your mindset needs to also be like, this is kind of a second layer here. Your mindset also needs to focus on, not so much on like what you can get now, but what might you get in the future. This sounds confusing. So what you have now is the work you're working on, right? Let's say you have some publication work and maybe like one retainer, or maybe you have all retainers and you want more publication work. So you need to focus not so much on what you're doing, like what is in your business, right? You're, oh my gosh, I have 5 deadlines this week, and then I have this ebook due at the end of the month. Like, not so much on that, but on like, am I actually working for clients I love? Am I actually getting to the place I want to be? Is my content strategy, or not content strategy, are my projects working in the long term? Am I moving in the direction that I want to be in terms of like where my business growth is? So you have to think, you have to pull out of this area that you're in and not so much focus on like every deadline you have and all this stuff. You need to work on like, cool, I have this stuff to do, but what's coming later? So the mindset piece also, like, this is another thing I'm going to add in. The mindset piece also goes into, there's a book by Jeff Goins. I never can pronounce his name right, but he has a book called Real Artists Don't Starve. And I find a lot of times there's this mindset with writers where they're like, oh, I get to do my thing. I get to be creative. I get to write the things I want to write. Like, I shouldn't be paid well. Like, I can't believe this is happening to me. I shouldn't be making money. And if you have a problem with that, like I did, like, you need to read Real Artists Don't Starve. And you'll learn about all of these people in history, like Michelangelo and I don't know. There was tons of different people that he mentioned that didn't starve. They lived rich lives. They made tons of money. They made art. They did all these things, and they made huge piles of money. Of course, they're very famous artists, but still, the point is that just being an artist doesn't mean you have to starve. Just being a writer doesn't mean you have to take all this low-paying work, because thank God you get to do the thing you like to do. Writing is a very special skill, and I think it gets it gets that liberal arts thing where people are like, oh, you got an English degree, like, what are you doing with that? It gets that kind of thing. But people think because they write emails every day, people think because they did a project a while back where they wrote some stuff, people think that because writing is so ingrained in our society that we do so much of it, that they're good at it because they do it all the time. They're not. They're not. I can tell you that from experience, that you'll get things from clients where they're like, oh, we did this and it's great. And you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, I can't believe you had people read this. Like, there's a lot of times where we forget that because we can write well and better than most people, and because we do it all the time, that we shouldn't be paid because it feels like stealing or it feels like cheating, because we're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And oh my gosh, this is way easier than I thought. Like, I can't believe maybe I should charge them less because it's not taking, it's taking me less time, or it's like less effort than I thought. But you know what? Like, that's the same thing. We're getting paid for value. The value that you have is that you're good at writing. You're good at relaying messages. You're very good at speaking to an audience. You're good at breaking down complicated topics, making them easy to understand. You're good at research. You're good at interviews. There's a lot of skills that come in with being a writer that are really important. And thinking that you shouldn't get paid well, or that you should be in this feast and famine cycle because you're like, that's just how it is. Like, I'm being a freelance writer. That's how it is. Like, I'm in this part. Like, no. There are plenty of writers who are never in the feast and famine cycle. Like, never. They figured it out. They've got a good rhythm. They're doing their marketing. They've got their mind right. They're looking ahead. They're paying attention to more complex projects. They're not out there like trying to get, very small temporary assignments. They're out there trying to make sure that they have all their ducks in a row and that they don't end up in that famine cycle again. So those are what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to add a part 2 to this because there's more to the feast and famine cycle. But if you can remember that you need to always do your marketing, even if it's one LOI, you need to look for more complex projects. And that means talking to your prospect and hashing that out before you get started, like asking them what they have in the pipeline, what's going on. And then your next one is your mindset, is like those 3 different facets of your mindset that you need to pay attention to. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to give a little pup date here because they're over there being snuggly in their little balls, their little fur balls. Uh-oh, someone heard the treat container. Good job. Bear, you want a treat up? No, he's asleep. Good girl. Bear's asleep. He's tired. This is what they look like after dealing with all the Texas stuff and all the snow. Charlotte, oh, Bo's awake. Hello. You gonna lean over? Don't fall over. Charlotte liked the snow. She thought it was fun. Bo, not so much. Bo was kind of, whoop, don't fall over. Bo was kind of over it. He gets cold really easily, and he just is not about it. He just wants to like run around a little bit and then come in. Charlotte had a good time. So if you guys have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. I'll go back and look through them real quick. So yeah, so there's one thing in here that Tommy said that says working on your business versus working in your business. Yeah, this is a lot of times the problem with the feast and famine cycle is people end up working in their business way too much. They don't actually work on their business, and then they don't leave themselves time to work on their business. And I did this for a long time. This was a problem I had for years. I didn't know how to fix it. Now I have a better system. But the feast and famine cycle is like you're always in your business. You're always, the feast part is like you're in your business. You're working on your deadlines. You're doing all that stuff. The famine part is because you weren't paying attention to the on your business part, which is the marketing and making LinkedIn connections and joining groups and growing your network on LinkedIn, like all of the things, or like, what we used to do is like in-person networking or whatever. So yeah, so there's a lot of pieces here where people think this is normal. The feast and famine cycle, it can be normal in the beginning, but it shouldn't last a super, super long time. I wish mine didn't last as long as it did. I just didn't know how to figure it out. I didn't quite get it. I didn't understand how to do everything at once, and I didn't have a good way of marketing quickly. I didn't have a system of like, find your prospects, put them in this spreadsheet, make sure they have enough money, reach out on an in-mail. Like, I didn't have a process that was really quick and easy and made sense. So I feel like that also helps too. If you can think about getting a process for both working on your business and in your business, what works for you may not work for someone else, but what someone else does may not work for you, or, it may work for you. Try to figure out a way to make it more systematized so that you can move along and not have to spend so much time in every little piece. So if anyone has any questions, you can pop them in the chat. If you feel like this has been helpful so far, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you feel like you want to hear more about how to, basically build a successful freelance writing career, you can subscribe below. I have pup dates, so I'm going to give you one more. So they're kind of sleepy right now. I woke them up from a nap. Here you go. Oh, buddy, what happened? Did you fall off your bed? Oh. If you guys see Bo's tail, he has that red spot. He has a happy tail, so he often ends up banging his tail against something, and then it bleeds, so we're going to have to clean that up. But, happy tail has been a thing of his for his whole life. Here you go, buddy. Good job. So, yeah. All right. If no one has any more questions and if everything's good, I don't see anything else in the chat. Cool. All right. Well, if you have any questions about feast or famine, you can drop them below in the comments. I will address them. And hope you guys have a great Friday, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.